Hola amigos. In this, our planned final episode on flamenco and the Spanish language, I want to look at phonology. Last time we looked at how words, the vocabulary of the Spanish language is used in the context of flamenco, but also how flamenco has contributed to the Spanish language as a whole. And now I want to look at the phonology, the way in which Spanish is spoken in the context of flamenco. And this is pretty interesting because, of course, as many of you will know if you looked at the previous video, but also if you watched David Bruce's excellent video on the mystery of flamenco, flamenco is overall associated with the south of Spain. And the south of Spain is a very interesting part of Spain with very interesting history that we will get into and will become relevant for the information that follows. The very first thing I want to start talking about is S-aspiration, or elision. So you'll notice that a lot, if you listen to a lot of flamenco music, you'll notice that instead of saying something like los gitanos, the gypsies, people will say lo gitano, right? And it's really interesting. I love how that sounds. I find it very beautiful personally. And what's particularly interesting about this is that there are lots of theories, lots of linguistic theories as to, well, why do people in the south of Spain elide their S's like this, right? Some claim that it's got some influence from Arabic phonetics. That may very well be. The south of Spain was the center of the various Arabic, or rather Moorish polities that were predominant in Spain from the 700s up until 1492. Some think that it's got elements of African phonology, North African phonology, that would have been sort of communicated or communicated through port cities. One of the theories that I've heard is that this actually is of climactic origin, right? So that because it's considerably warmer in the south, people spend a lot more time outside, and then that leads them somehow to aspirate in an attempt to either conserve energy or speak a bit faster. It's not entirely clear to me how that would work, but hey, if you guys know any better, please let me know in the comments below. Another really important part is the ceceo and seseo, right? We know that in the south in Spain, the tendency is that speakers in the south won't pronounce the coronal fricative th sound. So Zaragoza for Andalucían Spanish speaker would be Zaragoza. We see this in flamenco music as well. So Camarón de la Isla in his song La Leyenda del Tiempo doesn't say zapato, he would say zapato, right? And it seems as though this is due to Andalusia's separate phonetic development and comparative linguistic isolation from Madrid, right? As these features were kind of evolving in center and center-north Spain, they weren't happening at the same time in the south, right? Because the south was politically and culturally not separate, but certainly not identical with the center in the north, even after 1492 and more so before then, right? One of the other features I really like to hear is the yeismo. So yeismo in Spanish is when double L's and Y's are pronounced almost like a sh or a j sound. We see this in Argentinian Spanish actually as well. So any of you familiar with Argentinian or Chilean Spanish will be very comfortable with this sound. Often you'll hear llorar, to cry. It's a very useful verb to know in Spanish. We spoke about penita last time, if you remember. Llorar will often be pronounced, or sometimes be pronounced, chorar, right? The final thing that I like, that I want to talk about, and this one I like particularly, is the consonant elision. So last time I spoke about how tablado became tablao in reference to venues in which flamenco was performed. And we see this as well in two other cases. So the common Spanish word for a dancer is a bailarín or a bailarina, right? But in flamenco, we would say bailador, right? So I happen to be an amateur flamenco dancer, and I would be a bailador in Spanish. But it's very clear that actually comes from bailador, which has that same morphological history as something like toreador, matador, investigador. But in the context of Andalusian Southern Spanish, right, that consonant is elided. It isn't bailador, it's bailaor. And the same thing happens with the singer, right? So singers, integral to flamenco performances, those singers are not cantantes, they are cantaores, right? Which you would assume comes from the an older cantador. I'm doing a bit of linguistic reconstruction there. So forgive me if I'm being assuming a little bit too much there, but it seems extremely likely and probable, right? And this, by the way, this feature is called syncopy. Syncopy, right? Syncopy is when you drop syllables that aren't stressed. We actually do this a lot in English as well. I think maybe also one of the reasons, and this is maybe a bit more conjecture, that it takes hold in flamenco is that it changes the rhythmic patterns you can use, right? So cantador is actually kind of a shorter word than cantador and bailador as well. I'm not saying that that's why it arose, but it certainly is useful in the context of singing, right? Singing to rhythm and making sure that your words fit the meter that they ought to fit in. Anyway, that is everything for now. I want to actually recommend, if you want a really authentic way, authentic example of these phonological phenomena, I recommend that you listen to Paula Hermosin's channel. Paula Hermosin is a wonderful guitarist. I followed her channel for ages, long before I even had the idea of starting this channel with my friend, Lisedi. I've been watching Paula Hermosin's videos, and she's an extremely likable person. Lovely, lovely individual. And she speaks this beautiful Andalucían Spanish. So you'll find a link to her channel in the description below. Go ahead, watch her and subscribe, because she gives you wonderful insight into Spanish culture generally, Spanish musical culture specifically. And yeah, but with that, I will say thank you very much for watching. Muchas gracias por ver, and I will see you in the next video. Adios.